I'm very pleased for this inaugural edition of our video podcast to have with us Zhao Hai joining us online from Beijing. He is Director of International Political Studies at the National Institute for Global Strategy. Zhao Hai, so good to have you on the show. It's always a great pleasure to have discussions with you on these important topics.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Well, I remember we started, talking to each other about these issues during Trump's first term, right? That's how everything
Exactly.
kind
Yeah.
of got heated up. And now, what a time we're living in. So many things have happened, and the very latest, and the reason why we're doing this podcast is oil prices.
Mhm.
As we know, oil prices have surpassed $100 a barrel on Monday. Actually, at one time it went up to about $120 a barrel, and there is great nervousness in the international markets. Asian stock markets, for instance, really suffered a very heavy losing day today across the board. And the prospects are looking pretty bleak as several OPEC countries in the region, such as Iraq, such as Kuwait and UAE, have all announced that they're going to reduce production because their crude oil cannot be shifted through the Hormuz, and they don't have enough storage capacity, being such small countries in size. So some people are saying this is probably the most serious stoppage in supply of global petroleum production. And if it lasts for weeks, this is going to trigger a global shockwave, possibly trigger a global economic crisis. What is your take? How serious the situation is?
I agree. I think if the situation lasts more than, let's say, 3 weeks, the situation will get much more bleak and much more dangerous for the global economy. We're facing an abyss that if we jump over this, I think the global economy will fall into not just perhaps recession, but it's likely we're going into some sort of depression. Because it's the Hormuz is actually modern world economy's artery. And if you cut that artery, the blood stopped flowing. And I think it's quite obvious to everybody, and particularly for the people from East Asia, knowing that if their energy supply stopped, then everything stops because our modern economy is based upon oil and natural gas. And actually, natural gas is getting increasingly important for
Right.
a modern economy around the globe. And also, I think the reason is quite simple because not only we stopped floating the oil shipping out of the region, but also the storage is full. And they're shutting down or rolling back the production is precisely because there's no place to put the oil if you drill the oil and gas down from the ground. And that capacity is very quickly filled up and very quickly reaching capacity. So that's why I think in the coming days and then a couple of weeks, we will see a very dire situation. Of course, there's extra capacity around the world in other places. They might increase production and capacity, but in a very short period of time, that cannot replace Middle East oil. And that involves very complex rerouting of oil and natural gas around the world. That is not on the same level of when the Ukraine crisis happened, because Russian oil has its pipeline going to the west to Europe, but also pipeline going to the east. So, and if you cut some of the Russian oil gas out of the market, Middle East can quickly ramp up its production to fill some of the gap, and the U.S. also has extra capacity. So at this point, I think we're seeing at a very different level of geopolitical incident that is much bigger than the previous geopolitical crisis.
Well, you mentioned the Ukraine crisis. Actually, there are some studies which estimate that the estimated total hit on oil flows from the Persian Gulf states is 17 times larger than the peak April 2022 hit to Russia oil production. Would you agree with such a gloomy estimation?
I think that's pretty much in the ballpark. First of all, if you look at Hormuz, the oil export to the overall global consumption for crude oil is about 27%. For gas, it's about 20%. So if you cut that off, that means at least one-fifth of global supply is missing. Russian oil is different because even if with all the sanctions, there's multiple ways that Russia can ship its oil, and also there's a lot of people that can receive and transport Russian oil. That is very different from you cut off a main artery, again, a main artery of oil and gas coming out of the Gulf region. That's number one. And number two, remember this, the Gulf oil and gas has specific quality because oil and gas, and particularly oil, crude oil, coming out of different region of the world have a different composition, and the Middle Eastern oil is particularly fitted, towards East Asia and Asia in general, which is 80% of the Middle East oil consumption, and the other 20% goes to Europe. So even if you find alternatives, it's very unlikely that your refineries can quickly adjust to, you need to spend a lot of time to remodel and to get all those oils refined. So again, this is a very big disruption of the global energy infrastructure that cannot be easily fixed in a very short period of time. So of course, the price shooting up around the globe is the natural outcome of this geopolitical incident.
Well, Iran has warned that oil prices could hit 200 US dollars in the near future. Do you think that is a realistic estimation, or is it just, a threat to intimidate people and probably pressure the United States to alter policy?
Mm. In the extreme scenario, it's possible because later on, if this war continued to indefinite, sort of no end in sight, then we will have a non-linear increase of oil price. It's not going to increase bit by bit. It's just like it's going to happen like today and last weekend. The oil price is just going to shoot up. And if we look at previous comparable cases, for instance, 20 years ago, there's the theory that the world will run out of oil. And after the financial crisis, and when the U.S. opened up the monetary policy, pumping money into the market, there's a very short period when oil price shooting up, even up to like 150 US dollars per barrel. So back then, it's a financial phenomenon or a sort of concern about supply and demand. Now it's a short shock. And in that shock, if the people who are seeking oil on the margin cannot find the oil, then the price will adjust accordingly. So it's not going to be staying at 100 or 120. It's very much likely that it's going to go up very quickly. However, again, when the price is a mechanism to adjust supply and demand, if we really go to 200, then a lot of demand will be depressed. Again, the whole economy will shrink accordingly to adjust to this new reality, and we will see a lot of economic hurt.
How fit is the global economy at this juncture to weather such a potential shock? We're talking about the global economy, of course, but we're also talking about China, where I'm going to go and focus on more substantially.
Yeah. I think overall we are late, meaning that people have reasons, for instance, particularly climate change, to push for energy transition in this world from oil, gas, carbon-based towards more renewable, sustainable energy supply and consumption. However, because of all kinds of political reasons delayed, and in particular in recent years, as we all know, the first Trump administration, Trump quit the Paris Accord. And now the second Trump administration quit it again. And just recently, the Trump administration basically saying that there is no climate change. It's just a hoax. And China has no wind turbine. It's just selling all this renewable energy to Europeans, and we're not using it anyway. So
yeah, he claims that China is selling the windmills, not using itself, and you famously debunked that in the Davos meetings. I saw that video. I thought it was great, and actually went viral on the Chinese social media. It just shows how badly informed he is about things, right? Anyway, please continue.
Jokes aside, I think the thing is, because previously the technology is probably not there. And so the price of the renewable energy relative to carbon-based energy, if you do not calculate externality, then the traditional energy is always cheaper. But only in recent years, I think, because, and particularly because of China technological changes and global push for more renewable energy, we see that more and more they're on par with each other. But still, the process is too slow to replace the traditional infrastructure, and the world still consumes too much oil and in particular increasingly more gas. So because we rely so much upon this basic energy infrastructure, we're not prepared for this kind of shock. Over many years, as we all know, that the Middle East is not a peaceful place. Over past decades, there's always concern about either the Hormuz will be shut down or oil
Right.
tankers will be attacked. Oil infrastructure will be attacked. There will be terrorist attacks or militant groups attacking it, pipelines, and all kinds of possibilities. But I think overall, the Middle East weathered that kind of challenges so far that they prevented this kind of eventuality from happening. However, this time around, because this U.S. attack directly on the leadership of Iran and trying to basically topple its government, Iran goes to the extreme and applied this shutdown of the straits.
Mm.
So again, I think it's very bad timing for the world when the economy is recovering, trying to find its footing because of the U.S. Administration trying to disturb and destroy the current international trading system. And the pressure is already building. And now compound that with the energy crisis, I think we're in a very fragile situation.
Absolutely. Now, before we talk about the potential impact on China, I think one thing we have to establish or try to establish is exactly how long this is going to last, because then all kinds of calculation can be potentially attempted as to, whether countries in East Asia or in the region can weather this extreme period of high pressure. Now, earlier today on Monday, early in the morning, we know that Iran has produced a new supreme leader, the third one, who is son of the late supreme leader by the name of Mojtaba Khamenei. Of course, he is believed to be a hardliner, probably adding to the fact that just last week, his father, the late supreme leader, his mother, and his wife were reportedly killed at the start of the latest round of military strikes by Israel and the United States. So the emotional factor is, I believe, extremely strong. So with him in place, and the United States and Israel have sent out very strong signals, at least. President Trump said if Washington doesn't approve the new leader, he won't last long. And earlier, when talking about the potential eventuality of Mojtaba Khamenei being the new leader, he said he is not acceptable. And Israel has clearly said that the new supreme leader will unequivocally be targeted by Israeli military strikes. So how much longer is the conflict going to last, given the latest round of development and reactions?
Well, first of all, let me make this very clear that the U.S. Bombing and killing of the previous Supreme Leader Khamenei is a violation of international law. This is very clear, the violation of sovereignty. And I think the initiation of this war is hasty and without a clear goal. So exactly what does the Trump administration is trying to achieve? A regime change or the limitation of Iran's nuclear capability, destroying its military capability, or what exactly is the goal? I think not only American people don't know, even American Congress cannot figure out exactly what's the goal here.
Maybe
So
the
when you
White House
move a
doesn't need.
post,
Maybe the White House
yeah, maybe
doesn't.
Trump himself doesn't know. It's always changing. So without a clear goal, we don't know. I don't think Iran knows even how to respond to this kind of national emergency and threat. So I think the good thing, of course, now with a new supreme leader in place, and particularly the son of the late Khamenei, the center is there. I think the Iranian people, its military, its government will coalesce around the new leadership, and they will, without a doubt, continue to resist this kind of violation of international law, of sovereignty, of their own dignity and pride. I think Iranian people, if you talk to them, they are very proud people. They are not necessarily defending or trying to get a nuclear bomb, but they definitely try to defend their right to peacefully develop nuclear technology. So I think at this point, it's really up to Trump and also the Israelis to figure out how long they would persist and trying to continue to push. Right now, my suspicion is that the Israeli government is pushing Trump administration to continue on this war, continue bombing, continue to weaken, in their eyes, the ability of the Iranian military to continue the retaliation, the counterattack, until a moment when that capacity is completely eviscerated so that Israel will feel safe. And then probably Trump will say, okay, I have achieved complete victory. And during that process, I think, of course, Israel and the United States will continue to use their technology, particularly the latest AI technology, to try to track, identify, and kill the new supreme leader if he continued to be defiant. But at this particular moment, I think the world, again, going back to the previous question, of course, is when the price is going out of the window and the world economy starts collapsing, the pressure will build on President Trump and his administration. The midterm is coming, and not just midterm. I think his legacy is on balance. So I think, again, with all these factors he needs to consider, if he cannot very quickly bring the Iranian government to their knees, it's not likely that they will achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. And ultimately, they will have to settle on a negotiated terms.
Well, to talk about bringing the Iranian leadership or the Iranian, regime in their way, in their words, to its knees, I think it's ever more difficult as the conflict goes on, right? If you take out another supreme leader, that's because the IGRC actually pledged allegiance to the new leader and said they will be even more jihadist than ever before. So if the Trump administration and Israel decide to up the ante in their strikes against the Iranian state, then do you suspect that it's really going to spiral and the Iranians will be brought down to their knees, given the pride that they have?
I think we're watching a lot of the international events through Western eyes, through Western media. So, for instance, the Western media always emphasize the importance of IRGC. Of course, we know that in Iran they have a different political system, they have a different military structure. And IRGC played a very outsized role in the Iranian military defense and also their regional religious military capacity. But again, back to my original view, which is that this is no longer a matter of difference on developing nuclear weapons. After the initial military action of the United States, particularly after they bombed civilian sites and also oil infrastructure, is a total war against the Iranian people. So at this point, they're not just dealing with IRGC, they're dealing with a pride nation that rise up and unite against the purpose of in their eyes, a new imperialist. So again, it's very hard at this point for two sides to reconcile.
Right.
So the precondition is basically for the United States to realize they will fail to, again, bring the Iranian back to the negotiation table and agree to their terms. They need to first withdraw their troops, stop attacking Iran, and then find out exactly how they can make peace in the future. And at this point, I don't think there's any room for negotiations in the short run.
How long is that process going to be? I mean, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month? Because we also have the other factor, which is the planned Trump's plan to visit China right at the end of March. So it's another question. Basically, let's talk about the impact of the oil prices on China's economy for the time being. How about that? Because that's an important question I want to address. I see there are two sides to this question. First of all, China's importation of crude oil and natural gas, and second is the implication of high oil prices. So I don't know whether you agree with that. On the one hand, China's energy makeup. How much is China dependent on oil and natural gas imports from the Middle East through the Hormuz Strait? How much is that affected? Can you tell us first, please?
Well, first of all, let me go back to the previous point. Let me finish that. So there will be a different stage, just like when Israel is negotiating with Hamas, and they are setting up a plan for stages of withdrawal troops in exchange for a rebuilding of peace in Gaza. With Iran, the same thing. The ceasefire and the a peace agreement later on is totally different things. So right now, it could happen at any moment of a ceasefire because it's just up to Trump to give the order and say, okay, I have accomplished whatever I come in to accomplish. Basically for things, destroying Navy, kill
Missiles.
the get rid of the missile production capacity, and also stop enriching uranium producing of nuclear weapons, and then stop financing of regional militias. So I think even when this program is edited and going out, it's possible that the fighting has already temporarily stopped. But again, it's hard to predict exactly when Trump will change his minds. And back to China, I think at this moment, over the years, China has tried very hard to have energy, to achieve energy independence and reduce its reliance on the foreign oil. But still, I mean, China's dependency, overall energy dependency, has been greatly reduced, but still we're like, I think 40% of oil still coming out of the Middle East, particularly natural gas. Particularly natural gas over the years, we're growing actually more dependent on the natural gas from the Middle East, particularly Qatar, UAE. But I think some of those can be replaced by energy, oil, and gas from other part of the world, and also including when the price goes up, we can increase our domestic production because that's profitable after $100 per barrel. But again, if this is prolonged, we will also have a problem of energy supply.
Yeah, the statistics that I have gotten my hands on, of course, also from reliable Chinese sources, is that China's dependency on imports of oil and natural gas is about 15%, 1/5 of China's total energy consumption. So 85% China is self-reliant. So there's
yes.
So there's the good news. For instance, 55%, just over half of China's energy comes from coal, which does not need importation. And then about 27%, so less than 1/3, is oil and natural gas. And the majority of these energy have to be imported. And then there is about 20% non-fossil fuels, such as solar, wind, nuclear, biomass. And these are all domestic, organic. So there's no dependency to speak of either. So out of the 27% that China needs to import from the outside world, 40% pass through the Hormuz Strait.
The Hormuz, yes, that's the number. Well, I wanted to say one thing because you mentioned coal. Remember, after the outbreak of the Ukraine crisis, Europe also facing severe energy shortage, and they try to revert back to coal as well. But as we all know, it's very hard if you shut down the coal mine and also, basically dismantle the coal firing power plants. Without that infrastructure, if you want to go back to coal, it's very difficult. And also in northern China, for instance, we've moved from coal gradually towards burning natural gas. And now if we want to go back, it's quite difficult. So I think the alternative, of course, is to turn up the renewable energy supply because we have excess capacity of renewables like wind and solar. Because it's so hard to storage, and the supply is going up and down. It's not stable. But of course, if we increase the storage capacity and also on-peak, off-peak adjustment through smart grid, then I think we can increase our percentage of our use of sustainable energy from the current about 20% to increase even higher.
So are you saying that actually China is relatively in safe area when it comes to its energy security, even if the Hormuz Straits it could potentially be effectively closed for, let's say, a couple of weeks?
Mm. Well, I think China will weather, of course, much better than our neighbors like South Korea and Japan because they're over 90%. In Japan's case, even higher, close to 100%, depending upon foreign oil and gas, and in particular from the Middle East. Of course, they will seek alternatives. They will seek alternative from the United States, from Australia, and perhaps from Latin America and other sources. But again, their storage also has, the strategic storage has capacity, and once they've depleted their strategic storage, then they will face a lot more problem than us. Of course, like you said, over the years, again, because of President Xi's foresight, strategic foresight, we've been preparing for this possibility. We've been seeking energy independence, using alternative energies, and just remember, recently we started building, hydro dams in southwest of China.
Yeah.
If that's being constructed, the energy supply, the electricity production will be close to 3 times than the Three Gorges Dam we've already built. So I think China is on the path towards more energy independence. But in the short run, again, we're not there yet. So if the Hormuz continue to shut down, in the short run, we will face energy problems. But again, that's not necessarily for China's economy, not necessarily a bad thing in a medium to the long run, because I think the government and our people will be more sort of determined to move towards a electric-based, domestic energy-based energy transition, energy future. And more people will choose EVs rather than gasolers, right? So that's the direction.
I was just looking at the latest number. Actually, the gasoline prices have gone up already 3 times since the beginning of this year here in China. And if it goes up again, it will be 4 times already in the year 2026. So I was just saying to myself, this is going to make a lot of people think about EVs rather than petroleum in terms of buying their purchases in the future. But what about the Chinese economy?
Wait, did you say 3 to 4 times?
From what I'm reading, since the beginning of this year, domestic oil prices have already gone through 4 cycles of price adjustment.
4 cycles price adjustment. Yeah, 3 times up. Yeah,
1 times. Slightly readjusting. But if there's talk of a new cycle of upticking. So if that is the case, then that will be the 4th consecutive time. We're only in March, so this is great.
We both travel a lot. I think if you go abroad, if you go to the United States, their gas normally cheaper than China's. And before they have even higher grade. And if you go to Europe, they have higher taxes. So even though their gas at the pump is probably relative more expensive than China, but it's comparable. But now, if you go to Europe, it's probably double. Right now, it's double the price of China's, and the U.S. is going up very quickly because they're very much real-time market-based. We have a different mechanism. Well, we can adjust, in a certain period of time, and our national energy system is quite different from theirs.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think the higher energy prices in the short term, do you think that's going to put some strain on the Chinese economic development, the manufacturing, the production, even household, consumption? Do you see any ripple effects on that front? China is, trying very much to achieve its annual GDP growth target, 4.5% to 5%, right? Is that grand plan going to be disrupted in any way by what is happening in Hormuz?
Well, I'm not a real economist, so I can't really predict exactly how much impact the economic impact will be, because there's so many factors we have to consider here. For the whole year, I still believe that the Chinese government has the ability to manage the economy and continue to reach the target, because this year we have 4.5 to 5% growth target. And that is not very difficult for the Chinese economy, given the continued push for domestic consumption, and if given a relatively good external environment. But of course, now we have a short-term shock. It's going to disrupt the current, basically the upstream pricing of the raw materials, because not only the gas price will go up, but all chemicals that is based on petroleum will go up as well. So you will have a price shock initially, but then it's going to transmit downwards through the supply chain. For China, I personally think it's not necessarily a bad thing, because in the past couple of years, China's PPI is going down, and I think we're in this price shrink instead of expansion. And with this shock, if this shock is not too sharp, then I think the industrials will absorb it and then raise the price instead of, because of competition, the prices continue to go down. And if the price is raised, then it will have a relatively good impact on the economy. It will drive up the overall price. And that's what we needed now for the Chinese economy. Of course, if this thing lasts too long, then of course the profit of many companies will be hurt, and their bottom line will be hurt. And I think by then they will have to cut production, even cut jobs. We will have not just a production problem, but a consumption problem.
The Chinese stock market really plummeted, today pretty substantively. Do you have any understanding of the kind of sentiments on the markets in terms of investors, exactly what they're panicking about? Was it the tit for tat concerning the new supreme leader, or the oil prices?
I think both. I think initially the Chinese market, if you look at the first days of the attack, the Chinese market didn't reflect a long-term sort of doom scenario, because
it did okay, right?
They did okay because they think this will end in a relatively short period of time. And because last year, that's what happened when Trump launched 12-day war and have a bombing raid against Iran. That has a very clear defined goal, and it was achieved relatively quickly, and Trump declared a victory. So this time around, people thinking maybe he's just doing this for flexing the muscle, showing the power of the U.S., and then get some scores for the midterm. And this time it's different.
What was the trigger though? What was the trigger? It seemed all of a sudden, right? This weekend, over the weekend on Monday, everything kind of just, was it the new leader announcement? Because the Hormuz was not closed over the weekend. It already happened a couple of days before Monday.
Well, again, this is a short-term versus a medium to long-term scenario contrast. If it is a short-term, the economy can manage, and people don't want to lose their current position. So if they sell their position and get it back, then it could change very quickly, and they lose their position. So they wanted to hold on.
Right.
And then when the situation is becoming more clear, the US wanted to stay for a long run. The Iranians will resist for the long run. And that's a huge problem when people realize that the ripple effect is transmitting very quickly, and people have to sell, have to leave their position. But I think the problem is that the news comes that the United States will not stop at 2 carrier striker groups, and they will move the third one into the region. That shows the resolve of the Trump administration, that they want to continue the war. And also, even though the CENTCOM shows that there's a reduced number of attacks from Iran, but Iran didn't cease their use of missiles and also drones. They continue to retaliate. So that means this exchange is going to go on for quite some time, and nobody dares to go across the Hormuz. So I think this is sort of a gradual realization of the worst case scenario becoming true, and that's when the market fallout is triggered.
Is there, because basically Iran is saying they did not sealed off physically the strait. They basically, intimidated, deterred ships from trying to cross for fear of being stricken by Iranian fire. But there's reports saying Chinese ships, Russian ships, of course, Iranian ships will get the special treatment, will be able to, pass through the Hormuz Strait relatively safer. What is your understanding? Are such reports credible?
No, I don't think those reports are credible. It's possible that one or two ships go through the Hormuz, racing and test their luck. It's very much possible. But again, we're talking about a massive number, large tankers going through a very narrow strait. So if we return to normal traffic, then I think that scenario is not possible at present because of the threat that you mentioned. So again, we can't rely our luck on just a very small number of ships flying Chinese flag, for instance, going through the Hormuz, and then the world economy will be fine. That's just not realistic. One most important thing is not well, of course, it's based upon Iranian threat, but people, I mean, tankers are not willing to go through. It's because they don't have insurance. The insurance companies no longer have cover their shipment going through that strait. Of course, Trump and the Trump administration is saying that they're going to subsidize
Right.
the insurance,
Nobody
but
really.
again, nobody's going to go through that. That's not. I mean, nobody even knows how that works. So again, this is all those ships over 400 something like tankers still will stay on both sides of the Hormuz Strait. Nobody's moving.
Is it a credible? Because I've seen also reports, and the problem these days is it's like going to an antique market near Panjiayuan in the past, where you see 100 things and about one is genuine, and that's the feeling I'm getting, for the information picture. You see 100 pieces and you have to be extremely careful which one is credible, which one is relatively objective. I've seen something like China is sending some kind of ships to help safeguard Chinese interests, to escort, for instance, Chinese oil tankers. Is that happening to your knowledge? Could
No,
China be
no.
doing this?
Again, I think for our audience, they have to realize that is a battleground. You have missiles, drones flying over. You have all kinds of dangerous situations over there. If we send our warships going into a war zone, then it's put our people in danger, our servicemen and women in danger, and that's not necessary. And also, it's not good for China. What is the goal for Chinese warships going there? To escort? We have escort, warships in the Gulf of Aden. We're trying to deter pirates,
Right.
but not armed forces on both sides. When the missiles are flying, there's very much like
Right.
possibility that we will be attacked and mismarked as enemy or enemy forces. So I don't think it's realistic at this point. So that's what China did. China sent special envoy, a peacemaker into the region,
Right.
trying to bridge a deal between these two sides, and particularly trying to bring all stakeholders to say, this is not bearable for everybody, and particularly, those Gulf countries. They need to put pressure, and the global community needs to come together to put pressure on both sides, trying to reach a peace agreement, not necessarily adding more military forces to the region.
Well, you need to work on the source of the problem instead of trying to put, band-aid over where it's bleeding potentially. That's why I
Have you
understand.
noticed, just one more, have you noticed that the Western media, some of those sources, trying to get China involved?
Right. Oh, they're talking about
I
China's
mean,
dilemma. They're trying to
yeah, China's
calculate on the part
dilemma,
of China.
right? So a lot of the, let's say, China hawks or China haters are now very happy because they think they put on another chokehold on China, particularly on energy, and they think Iran is China's great ally, and therefore weakening or even destroying the government of Iran is somehow another victory for American imperialism. I mean, this
And this
is
come after Venezuela. People
out
are
of
trying to
Venezuela.
connect
Yeah,
the
they think
dots.
this is a sequence:
Next,
Venezuela, Iran, and then Cuba, maybe. I mean, North Korea or something like that. They think this is a winning strip for the Trump administration, and they will continue to win. I think this is really a hubris, and uh, they're not taking the lesson for the 20-year so-called war on terror. They have failed to invade Iraq, invade Afghanistan. They have to withdraw after spending lives and money in those areas. And now again, they're doing this again. This is really a short memory and short time ago. This is not some history, ancient history. So I think again, of course, we will have to wait until this is all over. But I think this hubris will not lead America to a winning place.
no, no, and they're talking about Cuba being next while they're still deeply trapped in the Iran situation. Can you imagine? To me, that is like, what is there any sense at all left, in the mind of some of these people? But I want to focus on the U.S. economy, because the upticking of the oil prices probably comes as a bigger shock. As you say, U.S. gas prices at the pump is almost real time to the global crude oil prices. So Trump has already sent out social media tweets saying, it's a small price to pay. Don't worry about it. People who think differently are just fools. Only fools think differently, and all
Mhm.
capital letter. How do you read the fact that he's sending out these posts to potentially soothe people, right? To say,
Yeah.
don't worry, it's a small price to pay. Is the price hike worrying for him?
Well, absolutely. Count me as one of the fools. I think this is really a wrong track for Trump if he wants to win the midterm election and continue his
And he dig
reign
and
with
he
majority of the Republicans. One thing is very
yeah.
clear. I think his political aides, is trying to keep him on track. From a month ago, when he goes to the Davos meeting, his script is basically talking again and again about affordability. He's winning in domestic economy. He's creating more jobs, having more investment, lowering oil price and giving people affordable life, and
And
trying to figure out
peace.
how to, yeah, and peace, and how to reduce credit card interest rate, how to lower the housing price, how to lower to resolve the problem of ACA,
Yeah.
healthcare. And now, I mean, of course, later on in the State of Union address, again, he's trying to address the affordability problem because that's the angle of attack from the Democrats. And also, that's very much people's focus. In the most recent polls, poll after poll, people's focus is on inflation, is on affordability issues,
Right.
it's the economy, it's stupid, right? But now Trump has attacked Iran and pushing up the oil price, and there's no end in sight. So I think if this lasts longer, then his base will definitely be falling apart because a lot of the people who support him rely on oil price because that's the traffic they need to go every day, the commute, and they need oil. If the gas price, for instance, double, then their income will be cut 10-15%. That's a very big problem for the affordability of the people and will be a major issue for the midterm election.
Does it still matter how long this lasts? I mean, is the urgency greater for them that the oil price is capped at an affordable level for the American voters?
I think at this point, the damage is done. There's no reverse back because people realize, particularly his base, realize number one, he's not a true MAGA. He's not a true America first. Look at Tucker Carlson. Look at Taylor Grain, Major Grain. They're the original MAGA people. They wanted to put America first, and now Trump is actually following neocon war plans, attacking Iran. That's the script from like 25 years ago. So that's damage number one. And damage number two is that the oil price is already going up, is not likely going down very quickly, even if they release strategic petrol reserve. And if this lasts longer, then people's memory will remember this. And I think this is not quickly or easily erased, even if they stop the war right now and the price goes down. But then I think there are other factors remaining in the US economy that will continue to make the inflation very sticky. So again, I think the damage is done in recent, regional, local elections. You can see there's a tide, a wave coming at him. I think this, if we call Iran a gamble, we will see what the outcome is. So far, it's not looking good.
Do you predict that Iran will win this war?
I think this war has no winner. If you look at Iran after this bombing, Iran will be much more weakened nation and economy. Already, the U.S. has been putting a economic strangle on Iranian economy. Its oil is not moving out, and the inflation is quite high, and people's life is miserable. And after this attack, Iran will. I don't think the U.S. will get rid of the sanctions against Iranian even after this war, because if they cannot achieve their goal, even if they reduce the military attack, the economic attack will remain intact. They will continue to try to strangle their economy. So I don't think out of this Iran will be a winner. But if the U.S. forces are driven out of the region and not be able to threaten Iran anymore, of course, in a certain respect, that's a win. Again, for the United States, even if Trump can declare victory and say they've achieved all the military goals,
He
if they
probably will.
cannot, yeah, if they cannot bend the will of the Iranian people, ultimately they lose. So for the world economy, they're suffering right now, and this suffering probably will goes on for weeks. And so again, I don't think there's winners. For
Well,
Israelis, this is not a win again, because we don't have much news coming out of the Israel. But as far as I know, they're under attack, and the Iranian missiles are continue to rain down in their major cities like Tel Aviv.
mm, yeah. Well, hopefully, this war will teach everybody a lesson, big or small, and hopefully that it's wrapped up as early as possible. But one factor which is very important, as I mentioned earlier, is President Trump's his own plan, his own wish to visit China at the end of March. Well, the exact date we don't know yet, has not been officially announced on the Chinese side, but China's top diplomat, Mr. Wang Yi, just said yesterday, he didn't say exactly whether this is happening or not, but he said this year is a big year for China-US relations. He says the agenda of high-level exchanges is already on the table. And what the two sides need to do now is to make thorough preparations accordingly, create a suitable environment, manage the risks that do exist, and remove unnecessary disruptions. China is always committed and open. It is critical that the US side work in the same direction. How do you read these words?
Well, I think China is a large, world's second largest economy, and by other standards, probably world number one. Is a responsible country. So when
It
President
has to
Xi
be.
said
Yeah, it
it
has
has
to
to
be.
be, it's now the foundation of stability in this very turbulent world. I think when President Xi made the invitation to extend his invitation to President Trump, it's a promise. So China will realize its promise and will continue to follow the agenda that's been set by top leadership. Because the two most important countries in the world needs to talk with each other, and the head of the state diplomacy must be accomplished to make sure that this most important bilateral relationship remains stable.
Yeah.
And I mean, particularly in this current environment. So, but again, I think there are many conditions needs to be met before this high-level visit can be realized. Because if there's no for instance, agreement on both sides, then what's the meaning of the visit, right? And then if the United States continue to challenge and to damage China's economic political interest, then why would we invite him and talk to President Trump? And now, even further, even if Trump is friendly to President Xi and talk the talk, but he's not necessarily walk the walk, because many of his officials are still not necessarily listening to him and follow his instructions and abide by or follow the two leadership's agreement. They continue to turn out all kinds of policies that are hurtful. So again, I think the time is very limited now to the time that he's supposed to visit China. Two sides needs to have actually emergency meetings to talk about exactly how to make this trip successful and satisfactory to both sides. Yeah,
I understand this is extremely important visit, not just for the two countries, not just for China, for the
yeah,
region, for the world as well, that the world's two largest economy are not fighting each other. They're actually talking to each other, handshaking. I think that's
exactly.
extremely important. And I think it's from that perspective, China is committed and open, that the agenda is on the table. But the Iran war, how much uncertainty has the Iran war put on this potential visit? China is also friendly with Iran, and China is also
Mhm.
friendly with countries in the Middle East, the countries that where their military forces, military bases are being hit by Iran. How is China going to balance that kind of relationship and while rolling out the red carpet for President Trump? You cannot not roll out the red carpet when President Trump is here in
Yeah,
China, yeah, for a state
yeah,
visit. But how much
yeah.
cordiality will you give him if killing is happening in the Middle East continues?
That's a very hard question, and I think currently there's a debate in China whether to continue to invite President Trump if this war lasts beyond the set date of visit. Again, Trump is talking about 4 to 5 weeks. Now it's the second week, and Hexas is talking about 8 weeks. And now there's information that they want to stay until September. So that's not just going to affect Trump's visit. It could potentially affect the president to revisit going back to the United States. So that has a disruption potential for high level exchanges between the two biggest countries in the world that's been set since last year. But again, I think we have to weigh the bilateral, regional, and global on a scale, right? So of course, both sides needs to look at, and China is very much concerned about what's going on in the Middle East, but that's a different region. And China is in the region of, the West Pacific, the overall, the east part of the Eurasia landmass. We have our neighborhood that we have a responsibility to maintain peace and promote prosperity. We have a very important bilateral relationship that is, continue to be the engine of the world economy. And there's all kinds of signs that if we don't get this right, there's more disruption on top of energy and other kind of disruption. If the tariff continue to be high, if the supply chain continue to be disrupted, if the so-called decoupling continues on the tech side, there's so many issues that we need to. I mean, the two leaders needs to talk to face to face. Iran can be added to that list, but I don't think it is an option for the two sides to cut ties and leave the other each other at a very sort of alienated place. So I think for China, the invitation for now stands, but we will look at exactly how the United States behave and what China's national interest is on the balance, and then decide what attitude China will have when talking with Trump.
All right, we still have some time. I'm sure the Chinese leadership will make the most appropriate decision possible to find that balance and carry out, relevant protocols, procedures to show that intricate balanced and send the right messages to the world. Thank you so much for clearing up a lot of things. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think the world can worry less on the part of China, especially the Western media.
Yeah, yeah.
Let us do our job and try to get it out to as many people as possible. Thank you so much, Zhao Hai.
Thank you
Yeah,
for inviting me. Really
yeah,
nice talking to you. Yeah.
great. It's always a pleasure. Okay, bye. Take
Okay, talk
care.
later. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Did you like our conversation? Did you like the initial edition of our video podcast? If so, please give me a thumb up, retweet it to your friends, whoever you want to share this with, and give me some encouragement. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel, most importantly. I'd love to hear more from you so that I can do more for you in the future. I'm pretty confident this is going to be very useful for people around the world. Thank you.